The 5 golfers who made him doubt himself were not always the most famous, but they were the most dangerous. In this golf documentary, we go inside the psychological battles of the game's greatest era, where legends like Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Lee Trevino, Tom Watson, and Seve Ballesteros didn't just compete, they changed the way the game felt. This is not about trophies. This is about pressure control and the moments where even the best players began to question everything they trusted. If you love golf history, legendary rivalries, and deep storytelling about the mental side of the game, this is a story you won't forget. Subscribe for more golf documentaries and untold stories from the golden age of golf. What is the moment you first realize you are not in control anymore? Is it when your swing begins to feel unfamiliar, when your rhythm slips, even though nothing has changed? Or is it when you look up and see a name you were hoping not to see? Because in this game, control is everything. You build it slowly. You repeat it until it becomes instinct. And when the pressure comes, you trust it to hold. But what happens when it doesn't? I remember a Sunday morning, quiet, still, the kind of calm that usually tells you everything is where it should be. A player beside me. Steady hands, no hesitation. He had done everything right all week. No mistakes, no wasted shots. And yet, before we even reached the turn, he was gone. Not because he played poorly, but because someone else had changed the pace of the round without ever saying a word. That was the first time I understood something I had never been taught. Some players do not just compete with you, they alter the way the game feels. They make your routine fragile. They make your confidence negotiable. They make control temporary. Looking back now, there were 5 of them. 5 men who did not need to overpower you because they could quietly take something far more important, certainty. And once that is gone, you are no longer playing the same game. There was a time when the game felt predictable. Not easy, never easy, but understandable. If you worked hard enough, if you repeated the right movements, if you trusted your preparation, the game would eventually give something back. Maybe not immediately, maybe not every week, but over time, it balanced itself. That was the belief we all carried into those years. The courses were demanding but fair. The conditions were tough but consistent. And the players, we were built the same way. Discipline, structure, control. You learned to eliminate variables. You built routines that could survive pressure. You treated each round not as a gamble, but as a process. And for a while, that was enough. You could look at a leaderboard and understand it. You could predict how a round might unfold. You could trust that if you stayed patient, if you stayed within yourself, mistakes would appear somewhere else. That was the order of the game. But slowly, almost quietly, that order began to shift. Not because the courses changed, not because the rules changed, because the players did. Certain names began to emerge, and with them something unfamiliar. They did not always follow the patterns we trusted. They did not always respond to pressure the way we expected, and most importantly, they did not always break when they were supposed to. That was the moment the game stopped feeling like a system and started feeling like a question. And once that question appears, you realize something uncomfortable. You are no longer just managing the course. You are trying to understand the people on it. Number 5. Arnold Palmer. There are players you compete against, and then there are players you feel. Arnold was never just a name on the board. By the time he reached the first tee, the day already belonged to him. You could hear it before you saw him. The crowd did not wait for moments to react. They arrived with him. They moved with him. And somehow, they lifted him. We traveled together. We shared weeks, flights, long stretches of tournaments. There was a genuine respect there, even a kind of quiet friendship. But that never survived Sunday, because when the round mattered, Arnold did something very few players could do. He changed the atmosphere. I remember Augusta. Early 60s, the final stretch. The kind of back nine where every shot carries weight, where silence is supposed to help you think, but there was no silence. Every time he stepped into a shot, something shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just enough that you could feel your own rhythm begin to drift. You could be playing well, hitting your lines, making the right decisions, staying inside your system. And yet, it felt like you were reacting, not leading. That was the problem. He did not need to rush. He did not need to force anything. The crowd did it for him. They leaned forward before the ball was struck. They held their breath a second longer, and when something happened, it felt bigger than it should have. That energy does something to you. It pulls you away from your process. It makes you aware of things you are not supposed to notice. It makes every decision feel heavier than it is. And in a game built on control, that is enough. Arnold never overwhelmed you with perfection. He overwhelmed you with momentum. And once the round begins to move at his pace, you are no longer playing your game. You are trying to keep up with his. Number 4, Jack Nicklaus. With Arnold, you felt the noise. With Jack, there was nothing to hide behind. No crowd pulling him forward, no emotion spilling over into the moment, just a presence that was far more difficult to deal with. Control, absolute control. We understood the game in a similar way. Preparation mattered. Structure mattered. Every decision had a reason behind it. There was no chaos between us, no unpredictability in the obvious sense. And that was exactly why he was so difficult. Because there was nothing to wait for, no weakness to appear, no moment where you could say this is where it turns. You could play your round exactly as planned. Fairways, greens, smart decisions, no unnecessary risks. And then you look up, and he is still there. Not chasing, not forcing, just accumulating. I think back to Augusta mid-60s. The kind of week where you expect the field to separate slowly, where patience is supposed to be enough. But Jack did not separate slowly. He moved ahead, without changing expression, without changing pace. Shot after shot, hole after hole. No mistakes you could point to. No moment you could replay and say, that's where he got lucky. There was no luck in it, just inevitability. And that creates a very different kind of pressure. Because now, playing well is not enough. Now you have to decide, do you stay patient and risk falling further behind, or do you step outside your game and risk everything collapsing? That decision is where he beats you, not with a single shot, but with the weight of knowing you have to be perfect for longer than you are comfortable with. Jack did not need to disrupt you. He let your own decisions do that, and once you begin to press, even slightly, you are no longer playing against him. You are trying to escape him. Number 3, Lee Trevino. By the time you think you understand the game, someone like Lee appears. And suddenly, your understanding feels incomplete. He did not arrive with the same foundation, not the same training, not the same language of the game, where most of us built our swings piece by piece. He built his feel, shot by shot, condition by condition, moment by moment. And that difference, you could feel it immediately. Because with Lee, nothing followed the pattern you expected. I remember a week at the U.S. Open. The course demanded precision, discipline, the kind of golf where you stay inside yourself and let others fall away. That was the plan. And for most players, that plan held. Not for him. He would step into shots that looked slightly off. Not wrong. Just unfamiliar, different shapes, different trajectories, balls starting in places you would never choose. And yet, they ended exactly where they needed to be. That is the kind of thing that unsettles you, because you cannot prepare for it. You can prepare for power, you can prepare for consistency, you can even prepare for pressure, but you cannot prepare for a player who sees options you do not even consider. And it was not just the shots. He talked. He smiled. He kept everything light, not as a distraction, but as a rhythm that did not match yours. And that matters, because your game depends on timing, on sequence, on staying inside a structure you trust. But when someone beside you is operating outside that structure, your own begins to feel rigid, limited. You start questioning choices you would never question. You hesitate where you would normally commit. And that hesitation is enough. Lee did not force you into mistakes. He made your preparation feel smaller than the moment. And once you realize that, you are no longer playing with confidence. You are guessing. Number 2, Tom Watson. By the time Tom arrived, the game had already taken a toll. You learned to deal with noise, you learned to deal with pressure, you learned to deal with the unexpected. What you are not prepared for is replacement. He did not come in loudly. He did not try to change the room. He simply fit the moment better than anyone else. There was a calm to him, not the kind that draws attention, but the kind that removes doubt. Every movement had purpose. Every decision felt settled before it was made. No wasted energy, no visible strain, just alignment. I remember the Open Championships toward the end of that decade, conditions that exposed everything, wind that forced you to think differently, shots that demanded imagination but punished hesitation. It was a test of balance, and Tom never seemed out of balance. You could play well, truly well, manage the wind, stay patient, accept the course for what it was, and still, it would not be enough. Because he was not chasing the course, he was moving with it. Shot after shot, he found the line that asked the least and gave the most. Not spectacular, not dramatic, just precise, in a way that repeated itself over and over again. And that repetition creates pressure. Not because it overwhelms you, but because it leaves you no opening. There is no collapse to wait for, no mistake to anticipate. Only the quiet realization that your best may no longer define the standard. That is the hardest part, because now the game is no longer about holding your position. It is about keeping up with something that feels just slightly ahead of you at all times. Tom did not take anything from you directly. He simply made what you had feel outdated. And once that thought settles in, you are no longer defending your game. You are trying to evolve it. Mid-round. Number 1. Seve Ballesteros. There are players you prepare for. And then, there are players you cannot define. Seve was never contained by the game the way the rest of us understood it. He did not rely on structure. He did not depend on repetition. In many ways, he played without the limits we spent years trying to respect. And that is what made him the most difficult of all. Because everything you trusted did not apply. I remember watching him in conditions that should have punished anyone who stepped outside the margins. Tight lines, heavy rough, angles that demanded discipline above all else. That was the expectation. But Sev never accepted those terms. Balls that should have cost him, didn't. Positions that should have forced him back, didn't. He would find himself in places no one plans for, places you avoid at all costs. And from there, he would create something that did not seem available. Not lucky, not accidental, deliberate, in a way you could not predict. That is the difference. Because with every other player, you can map the round, you can anticipate tendencies, you can understand where the pressure might break them. With Sev, there is no map. You can execute perfectly, stay within your system, make the right choices one after another, and still, the balance of the round feels unstable. Because at any moment, he can change it. Not with power, not with consistency, but with imagination that does not follow rules. And when that happens, something shifts inside you. You stop thinking about your next shot. You start thinking about what he might do. That is where control disappears. Seve did not beat you by playing better within the game. He beat you by playing a different one. And once you realize that, there is nothing left to solve. When people look back, they remember the trophies. They remember the names at the top of the board, the numbers, the records that stayed long after the rounds were over. But that is not what stays with you. Not really. What stays are the moments when the game stopped behaving the way you expected it to. The moments when control felt uncertain, when preparation felt incomplete, when something you had trusted for years suddenly felt fragile. Each of them brought a different kind of pressure. Arnold showed you that the game is not always played in silence. Jack showed you that perfection can be quiet and relentless. Lee showed you that structure has limits. Tom showed you that time does not wait for anyone. And Seve, he showed you that the game can exist outside of everything you think you understand. And when you place all of that together, you begin to see it more clearly. The hardest opponents are not the ones who overpower you. They are the ones who change your relationship with the game itself. Because once that changes, you are no longer relying on what you know. You are trying to hold on to something that is already shifting beneath you. And that is a different kind of pressure, one that does not disappear when the round ends, one that follows you into every decision that comes after. In the end, they did not just challenge the way I played, they changed the way I saw the game. And once that happens, there is no going back.